Hello everyone, and welcome today to this audio podcast. This synopsis is part of the Strap and Investigate. This synopsis is part of the Convoy. This audio podcast as part of an audio podcast series and synopsis as part of the Shitstorm Squadron, and this audio podcast as part of a Storm Robotics production. Through this synopsis, a little bit in around where the series, this series will, this audio podcast series will sort of will give us sort of more of an overview of some previous peer-reviewed and sort of published work looking at a desperate need for good leaders in context of the scientific and healthcare scientific sort of profession. Some works that was published in around 2020, and an excerpt of this audio podcast was in on through Storm Robotics production in around 2022 also. However, in this series, a sort of an elaboration of that particular audio podcast, and in on as part of the sort of original peer review or published works from 2020. So in on this synopsis, then, looking at a desperate need for good leaders. So the biomedical sciences, or laboratory medicine, or pathology and science are generally sort of a dynamic and challenging sort of profession, and at the same time requiring sort of requiring healthcare professionals from laboratory medicine and pathology sort of basis to become inspiring sort of role models and leaders, and even laboratory medicine sort of managers in context of healthcare or our healthcare services. In today's sort of ever-changing and demanding healthcare, identifying and developing scientists, practitioners, or leaders, and sort of managers is perhaps one of the greatest challenges faced by the laboratory medicine and pathology profession. So the in this audio podcast, there'll be a look to a sort of a look at summarizing or bringing an overview of a sort of a biomedical narrative on leadership and management, and at the same time looking at aspects that have been connotated in some previous audio podcasts, but in particularly in around blood cell transfusion practices, red cell blood transfusion practices, being where this audio podcast series will look at a descriptive to highlight the importance of integrating sort of knowledge and skills from in the construct of the sciences or construct of laboratory medicine. Secondly, to highlight why, for example, what is referred in literature, aligned where frontline healthcare practices sort of link or have a sort of an interlink in aspects of laboratory medicine and pathology, and terminology referred to as patient-reported outcome measures, are going to be or have become sort of more important in amongst the sciences, and additionally why this is and would be important to improve the sort of foundations of the healthcare sciences, healthcare sciences generally. At the same time, there are some at the same time, sorry, there are some very adept scientists or healthcare sciences practitioners who tend to have a lot of understanding or knowledge in sort of the main areas of healthcare practices or healthcare sciences and practices, yet are firstly either not given sort of the opportunity to practice a knowledge base, so for example unable to demonstrate leadership quality, and or secondly where there are and or secondly, where around practice management, i.e., where there are experienced managers which are not identifying leaders in laboratory medicine, in the laboratory medicine or pathology profession, and who, for example, for example, have established understanding in areas of the profession, albeit practically or other or in other ways. So there therefore scientists or healthcare scientists and laboratory practitioners, laboratory specialists, and laboratory sort of practitioners are needed to contribute through multidisciplinary efforts, using evidence-based practices thus shifting the paradigm of leadership and management, wherein prospectively they advance the profession, wherein the ultimate goal of the laboratory medicine profession or biomedical profession, if you will, is to achieve excellence through evidence centered or centric practices, but also additionally sort of producing healthcare scientists or scientists who can demonstrate their knowledge and then knowledge in a sort of a broader sense. So in closing aspects of this synopsis, thinking more unilaterally, it is important to appreciate that patient-reported outcome measures will or are to become sort of more important or increasingly more important, and potentially integrated into prospective laboratory sciences or pathology sort of practices, and perhaps more specifically in regard to red blood cell transfusion practices, for example, and supporting the care of healthcare service users with varying long-term conditions and or chronic illnesses. Some terminologies that can be identified can be used in databases to identify similar literature aligned with this audio podcast include include biomedical sciences, leadership and leadership and management, and sort of around sort of terminology such as pathology and laboratory medicine. Additionally, so that draws this audio podcast to a close. This audio podcast, as part of the Strap and Investigate, this audio podcast as part of the Convoy, this audio podcast Synopsis as part of the Shitstorm Squadron, and this audio podcast as part of a Synopsis as part of a Storm Robotics production.